What's up, folks, and welcome to Indie Ramble. We're back in Brawler Land today, and this is interesting because this game is actually a sequel, and it's a sequel to a game I'd never heard of before. But when I was offered the press code for this, I found that the first game was actually on sale for peanuts, so I picked it up and actually played through it first, just so that I could see how one game evolved into the next one. So I've actually played both of these, and I have completed them both. But this is a weird one in more ways than one that I'll explain here. So this is Bud Spencer and Terence Hill Slaps and Beans 2. And if you're thinking, wow, that's quite a title, yeah, I agree with you completely. So I didn't know who these two characters were, and I had to look them up. But Bud Spencer and Terence Hill well, one of them has passed away. Bud Spencer has. Terence Hill is still around, but they were a pair of Italian actors who starred in a large number of spaghetti westerns and slapstick comedies over the years. Apparently, they were quite regionally popular, I guess you'd say. I'd never heard of them before, and they haven't really made any films in a long time. But this developer got the license to make a game starring both of them, and as they did, and they did, well, they made two of them, in fact. So this is rather interesting, and these are brawlers, but they're brawlers with a little bit of a twist here. So I've finished the game, as you can see. I can choose all the levels, but I'm going to pick a couple of random ones here just to give you an idea of what's going on. So this does have co-op, local only, which the community has been bemoaning a little bit because the first one was local only as well, but, you know, Steam Remote Play is a thing at least. And when you're playing solo, you can actually choose either of the two characters, but you can switch between them on the fly in the game, which is kind of cool. I always thought that was very interesting. Now, the big difference between this one...
Yellow gold.
I heard it.
As soon as we get our hands on the gold, we're going to Florida to party.
We're already in Florida.
Oh, yeah. That's right.
So, here's one major difference between the two games. The cutscenes in this, these games have a lot of cutscenes. One of my gripes with these games is they like to take control away from you a lot. But the difference between this one and the first one is that the cutscenes are all fully voiced, which is kind of cool. Now, it's not Bud Spencer and Terence Hill actually playing themselves. Bud Spencer is no longer with us, and Terence Hill is pushing 80. So, I don't know who these voice actors are, but it's not the original ones. But it's interesting because these cutscenes can be pretty long, to be honest with you. So I appreciate the fact that they did add in voice work to this. And as you can see, these games have a very 16-bit era art style. They kind of... The pixel art style reminds me a little bit of the old LucasArts adventure games, that kind of thing, but applied to a brawler, which is kind of cool. But there's a lot of art in this. The levels are varied. There's a lot of different enemy types. A lot of, there's a lot of variety in this, and I think the art, they did a bang-up job. Also, the soundtracks in these games absolutely slaps, and I don't just say that because it's in the title, though maybe partially. The soundtrack in these games is truly fantastic. I actually really like it. And here you go. You're going to be beating fools. So you only have a light attack and a heavy attack, and each of these characters has different moves available to them. Obviously, Bud Spencer is kind of the more heavier character. And the way this works is there's a couple of places in the environment where you can trigger things like this. There we go. You can pick up items and throw them at people or hit them with it. A lot of the times that's fruits and vegetables, which apparently are a little bit more destructive than I would have thought. There's power-ups that you can pick up. I picked up something there that sort of gives super health, which is basically endlessly recharging health for a period of time. And there are sort of light combo attacks. The combo system in this is not terribly deep, but you're going to see under my character's health bar there is like a blue bar, and that's sort of a stamina thing. And all that dictates is how many heavy attacks that you can do. And it recharges fairly quick, as you can see. You only have to do a few regular attacks and it recharges. And you're often going to be dealing, this is another thing that this game does differently than most, is in some cases, as you can see here, you're going to be dealing with some pretty large crowds. Much larger than you would get in a typical brawler. And there are light enemies and heavy enemies. Some enemies require very specific attacks to take down, or you have to hit them from behind, or something like that. So there's some challenges mixed in there for sure. So here we go. This is supercharged, which gives me unlimited stamina for a period of time, so I can just walk up and keep kicking dudes in the nuts. which is the best way to play any brawler, as we all know. And, you know, here you go. And by, in my case, on a controller, pressing the L1 button, I can switch between Bud and Terence at any time. And I will say the friendly AI in this game is actually pretty good. It's generally good about picking targets intelligently. If its health gets below a certain threshold and there are healing items around, it will go and automatically use them. You don't have to babysit it. That's one of the things I really like. When I first fired up the first game and was like, and saw that it was, that you had to work with an AI partner, I'm like, this is going to be infuriating, isn't it? But no, it actually looks after itself reasonably well. And if its health gets low or you feel that it's not handling things very well, you can switch to the other character at any time. However, when you're playing solo, if only one of them goes down, it's game over. So you have to be cognizant of that. You got to make sure that your AI partner's health stays up high. But aside from some pretty gnarly, I'm going to say cheap encounters in the late game, that's never really a concern, to be honest with you. So you're going to go through these different levels, which vary in size and environment type. There's some, not what I would call puzzles, but there's a couple of elements in this game in particular where you have to traverse environments and can only use one player for certain things. So the game actually, if you're playing solo, actually tells you in this section you're going to have to switch back and forth between the characters because only certain characters can do certain things. Puzzles are never hard, but that's an interesting way to mix things up. And one of the other unique things that this game does is it has periodic mini-games that sort of break up the traditional brawling stuff. And it actually reminded me a little bit of the differences in what you have to do in this game reminded me a little bit of Bayou Billy back on the NES. Now, any of you who are old school retro players are probably going, that sounds like an insult, because Bayou Billy was actually kind of bad. It was more than kind of bad. It was actually pretty terrible. But it's actually not an insult, because the thing that Bayou Billy did differently than a lot of other games that was really neat is it wasn't just a brawler. It had gun sections, it had light gun sections, it had driving sections, it had all of these different modes that made it so that you were almost playing sort of multiple genres of game in one, which was quite innovative at the time. And this does that to a certain degree with these mini games and stuff that you're going to have to do. Some people are going to like them, some people are not. I thought a couple of them weren't too bad. I thought some others were kind of lame, to be honest with you. Now, I don't think we're going to come across any of them here, so I'm going to cheat a little bit and show you these a different way, because all of the mini games are actually available. So there is a local couch party mode. And this is all the different mini games here. So this one you have to balance a boat full of bananas. This one is like a weird eating contest thing. This one is like a track and field game. This one was really easy. This is like a card, like a memory game. This is like a weird racquetball kind of thing. This is like a almost like Uno Light, but there's that you can cheat at. There's airboat bumper cars. There's well, this is more like Combat from the Atari 2600, and there's this choir mini game which I actually had a bit of a hard time with because it wasn't explained very clearly. And these come up periodically over the course of the campaign, and you're gonna be dealing with those things as they come up. And it does provide an interesting break to the action. But people who like brawlers to just be kind of continuous brawling, you may find that a little frustrating. I didn't personally, but I think some people will. So I'm just going to skip ahead here. You can actually skip through the cutscenes if you want. You can't just skip the whole lot. You've got to mash your way through it. So here's the thing about these. I respect the fact that these have very nice production values. I respect the fact that they do things differently in terms of the mini games and how... Oh, there's actually one of the mini games. Okay, you know what? I'm going to skip out of this one. This isn't terribly interesting. I respect that they did do the thing with the mini games and whatnot. Like, they actually did try to mix things up a little bit and do some stuff that's different. I appreciate the fact that they gave you an AI partner, a required AI partner who's not an idiot, who's not completely useless, and therefore makes the game frustrating. I definitely appreciate that. And so, do I think these are good brawlers? Well, they're fairly short. They're each about 3.5 hours for a single playthrough, and there aren't really multiple playthroughs you can do in them. The main beef that I have with these is that the combat system is fairly light. There really isn't much of a combo system to these. I wish there was more. I wish there was more to them as a modern brawler than there is in terms of the fighting system. And I'll be honest, I really don't like the stories they're trying to tell. It takes control away from you way too much for these really long cutscenes that are full of jokes that I frankly don't find very funny. Now, that's subjective. It might just be my sense of humor. But these are based on characters that made slapstick comedies for a very different generation. And that generation is not going to be playing an indie brawler in 2023. It feels like the characters and the setting and the humor in these games are targeting a group who won't be playing these games. And I just didn't find it very interesting. The type of characters and the sort of slapstick type stuff they're famous for does work in the context of a brawler. But they go out of their way to try to tell a fairly extensive story with a lot of different characters and a lot of dialogue, and just none of it landed for me. And I was just kind of like, can I just skip this and get back to beating people up, please? And, that's a me thing. As I always say, I cover games on this channel that I either like or that I think my audience might like. And I don't dislike this game. I think as a game, it's a little shallow, but not too bad. This is a very easy game. You could get a friend or someone who's not really much into games to pick up and play, and they can just button mash their way through it, and, you can have a little bit of a good time. I just think the cutscenes and the storytelling is too long. I don't think the jokes are really that good, and I kind of wish you could just turn the story off so that it just skips all the cutscenes. That's just my opinion. And I think some of the mini games in this are definitely better than others. But I really do like the production values. I love the art. I love the different settings that it takes you through. I really love the I really love the enemy variety, the environmental variety. And like I said, the soundtrack to this game, I kind of wish I could just buy the soundtrack on its own, honestly, because the soundtrack for this game is full of bangers. Really good stuff. Not even a lot of the best fighting games don't necessarily have the world's most memorable soundtracks. Like they are, but there's nothing super impressive. You don't hear a fighting game with like an orchestrated soundtrack or with a lot of actual recorded vocals to it or things like that. And this game does have that, and I think that's really cool. It does a lot of things well and different in a way that I really appreciate, because it's hard to innovate in the brawler space. There's only so much you can do with this genre, and the people who, really put some time into trying to figure that out, I think should be applauded. It just doesn't land in every way for me. But if you do like brawlers, you might have a good time with this. And it does look good. It does play well. Little shallow, but it does play well. And it's a good couple hours of fun, and there are 2 of them now, which is nice. I would say these are really best played in co-op. I think if I was playing this with a friend, I would have enjoyed it a lot more, even with the faults that I've had, because we could kind of, like, in terms of the ridiculous story and humor and whatnot, we could probably just laugh at how goofy it is, right? And we'd have a better time that way. But playing it solo, you don't really have anyone you can laugh at that stuff with or make fun of it with, right? And that kind of takes some of it out. So my personal recommendation is, if you like brawlers, give this a look, but make sure you got somebody to play it with. That would be my suggestion for it. But yeah, that is Bud Spencer and Terence Hill, Slaps and Beans 2. It is out now along with its prequel. The prequel looks like it's often on sale for pretty cheap. And this one did up the production values a little bit, but they both play quite similarly. So, if you're looking for a brawler, you might want to start with the first one when it's on sale first, and then if you like that enough, maybe sort of evolve up into this one. Would be my suggestion. But yeah, they're fun times, but they definitely didn't land on all aspects for me. So thank you guys very much for watching. I do appreciate it. If you like what you saw here, please do all the normal YouTube things. Those really do help the channel out a great deal. Leave a comment down below. Tell me, what do you think of this? Do you think I've been overly harsh on the humor? You know, do you have actual memories of Bud Spencer and Terence Hill? And what do you think of how they did in terms of representing these characters? And let me know some other brawlers that you're really into these days. There's more and more coming out. I try to cover a lot of them, but I definitely can't catch them all. And of course, you can follow me over on twitch.tv/pxabstraction for multiple variety streams a week. I cover other indie games as well as retro stuff there, including a bunch of games that are better suited to streaming than YouTube. We have a fantastic community there, and I'd love to see you be a part of it. Thanks again, everybody, and I'll see you in the next video. You folks have yourselves a good one. Take her easy.